on Mauna Kea started 12 years ago and has involved my colleagues and I myself engaging in continuous conversations, listening and learning. During this time, I personally have made countless red-eye trips to Hawaii to meet with, to listen to, and to learn from the community, especially the native Hawaiian community. I have shared breath with them with my respect and aloha.
The fundamental thing that you must understand about Ho'oponopono is that it is based in pono. And what pono means is the rightful balance of all things. And this is only possible with oia i'o. And this means the absolute, undiluted truth. And it is upon this, and only this, that true peace can be built. So it is in the spirit of pono, for the sake of peace and your university, that I sincerely urge you to hold an immediate vote and divest completely from the TMT project on Mauna Kea. I need to be really clear about this in the spirit of truth, that if you go forward, you are committing genocide. That's a harsh word, I know. And I say this because it is the absolute oia i'o truth. You may not see the deaths that are caused by projects like TMT, but as a health worker and a medicine person, I do.
What's important is that the TMT has not operated completely in good faith. And the TMT simply cannot and will not be built on Mauna Kea. We will use all peaceful means. We will use all legal means. And if necessary, we will lay our bodies down to stop this project. In this time of great suffering from the COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter revolution, you stand at a precipice, you the Regents. You can join with us to help heal the land and the people. The land and the people are one, okay? So what happens to the land happens to the people. But you can join with us to help heal that process and heal the earth. Or you can fall backwards and resort to the old racist and colonial paradigms that have been implemented all this time and that aren't working and the whole world is rejecting.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. We really want to call for you to take a vote and to really divest from this project. It is going to hurt people. It has hurt people. And it will continue to hurt people if it moves forward. We want you to work with us to help science evolve, to help science find its humanity and compassion, because science that does not have humanity has no purpose.
So my willingness to publicly support TMT has taught me that I'm not alone in my endeavor to be a Native Hawaiian astronomer. Dr. Heather Kaluna and the late Dr. Paul Coleman are Native Hawaiian astronomers who have achieved this dream. And we have a generation right now of Native Hawaiians that consists of me, Tyler Kupono Trent, and Makana Silva. We are preparing to take the helm and lead the way for more students to join us. The ancient Hawaiians were people that had an intuition of the night sky, so advanced of their time, and our minds still hold that intuition.
30 seconds.
And so, in conclusion, I would just like to urge for all of you to refer to the PowerPoint that I provided, Pupukahi I Holomua, the way forward from a Native Hawaiian point of view. In this, you will find accurate, important historical and cultural facts. Mahalo for your time, for this opportunity to share my experience, and for your continued leadership. As a Native Hawaiian astronomer, I am honored to support the 30-meter telescope and the bright future it brings for my people, the residents of Hawaii, humanity's endeavor to understand our place in the universe, and the many generations after our time that will benefit from this project.
Since January 2020, I was part of a group that met with businessmen from Hawaiʻi, TIO, and Aura. We stated at the beginning that we were willing to meet face-to-face with each other, but this was in no way to be construed as ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is a very high-level Hawaiian cultural process which requires ceremony, self-reflection, and a desire by all parties to return to a former state of pono. It is primarily used for healing in families and familial relations, and often takes years to accomplish. This effort to communicate face-to-face cannot be considered ho'oponopono. Further, it is a false statement that the Aikapu or old religious system and therefore Hawaiian beliefs no longer exist because it was abolished in 1820. Aikapu is no longer the state religion. However, our Hawaiian cultural beliefs are still central to the well-being of the large majority of Kanaka Maoli, particularly Hawaiians who were raised in the belief and still practice our culture. Many of us hold non-Christian beliefs, including our Hawaiian religion. The upper region of Mauna Kea is sacred to us. My PhD research centered on Native Hawaiian well-being and the inseparability of Aina, or our Hawaiian land, to our core identity as natives. The visceral reaction of Kanaka Maoli who perceive permanent and irreversible damage through the Aina, which includes land, ocean, sky, native plants, animals, and people, stems from this relationship.
30 seconds.
Our resistance will not cease. Each phase of the proposed TMT construction will be met with galvanized and intensified resistance of protectors, which would require the state and county to be involved in a protracted major law enforcement operation. Despite promises from Hawaii's governor, no guarantee can be made that construction could commence without further interruption. Not for the 8 to 10 period that would be required to complete the project. Costs to you will continue to rise. This project continues to tear at our community, and no amount of money will fix the permanent and generational damage you cause. We Kupuna will continue our commitment to stand on the road to protect Mauna Kea for the sake of our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. When we die, they will stand in our place. Therefore, I implore you, the University of California Board of Regents, to halt any further attempts to build on our sacred Mauna. And this decision should be made immediately. So mahalo for letting me speak today.
Before we go to questions, I just want to make sure that I inform everybody that I had some extensive conversations with a variety of folks prior to this meeting, including with many of the kapuna who were arrested last year, including Dr. Noenoe Wong Wilson. And it was an incredibly moving and impactful conversation that impacts my view of these questions. And so you will hear that expressed as I engage in the questions and answer following that. But I do want to thank everybody for bringing their comments before us.
I went back to the 2014 board approval by the Regents. And what I found is that literally we have been sitting here for 6 years with really no specific gameplay to get to the finish line. I'm looking at it from a purely practical standpoint, and I just asked the question, what have we accomplished in terms of getting to a point of having a completed project when in fact you have thousands of people who are willing to give up their entire life because it's gotten to a boiling point. And by the way, I think it's gotten, I think the indigenous people in Hawaii are more committed to stopping it now than 6 years ago. So I just don't know from a practical standpoint, where are we? It was supposed to be completed, by the way, this year.
So let me just go back to Paul on that. So Paul, the 2014 item anticipated completion by now, correct?
It did.
So what makes the time going forward any different than the time going back the last 6 years?
You know, Chair Perez, I am probably not the best person to respond to that. Simply to the newness of being on that board, I would ask respectfully.
Then I will take it to Michael just shortly. Do you think we're in a substantially different place than we were 6 years ago that makes you think we'll be able to complete this in the next 5 years?
I have 3 points. One is...
I have one question.
Yeah, okay.
I answer my one. We got lots more.
During this time,
bootstrap answers later.
During this time, there's been lots of progress technically on the project all over the world. So there has been some progress there. 2, we have developed the alternative site. 3, the engagement of the NSF really is an opportunity to do a restart in Hawaii. And if there's any hope for this to be resolved there, I think the engagement of the NSF is probably it.
Very good.
Do we have numbers on exactly around how many supporters of the TMT we have versus supporters of divestment?
So I don't believe that anybody has, so there's 2 separate expressions. One, we've received letters that express support or opposition. I don't know that we have math on exactly how many, although it seems to me that the overwhelming majority are in opposition. Separately, there is polling that keeps being referenced that I have not seen, that I have not seen the crosstabs on, that I have not seen who's paid for, that I have not seen the construction of the questions of. And polling is only as good as the construction of the question and the choice of the respondents. So would anybody like to add to my response? Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Regent Designate Zaragoza. I appreciate your, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I believe one of the panelists was raising their hand.
And who's that?
I believe, sorry.
Kealoha Pisiota has a
Please go ahead.
I did just want to say that our petitions have now reached, in opposition to the TMT, have now reached over 500,000. We can produce some links, I think, for you to review that.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
The proponents have presented the merits of their argument, the merits of the telescope, and I agree with them. I think that TMT is going to be an amazing project. I'm a big astronomy nerd myself. I love the work of Andrea Ghez on supermassive black holes. So I really appreciate the promise that the scientific discoveries that are to come from that project. With that said, there was no engagement with the reality of the people on the ground and the opposition to it. So from the proponent stance, what is the nature, as you understand it, of the opposition, and do you feel like it can be addressed?
Personally, in my experience, I have received threats of violence to my physical well-being. And so it can be a bit intimidating, as well as I've been alienated by people here that I've known my entire life. I constantly receive messages of ridicule and hate on social media, sadly, by many people that I've known my entire life who know me aside from this telescope, but that cannot be their perspective of me anymore. And so for those of us who are in support of the telescope, we do have a Native Hawaiian-led group, Imua TMT, and we have tried to open the pathways for dialogue, but we by no means want to be forceful. Of course, that's not going to be useful. And so I do think that this has been a wonderful opportunity for all of us to hear each other out. And so I thank you all for this opportunity.
Bill, am I allowed to go forward, or did you have a follow-up?
I think Kalepa would like to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I've always maintained that that mountain is large enough if the community chooses to share the space fairly amongst all users, not just observatories, but cultural practitioners and anyone that is in awe of the work that takes place on the mountain. TMT has earned a legal right to proceed, and it was people who obstructed access to the mountain that basically stalled the movement of equipment up the mountain. I do appreciate and respect the right of protesters have the right to protest, but they also have to respect the law. And I've always urged that the state has to restore law and order to the mountain, and all sides need to be respectful of the process. That TMT has earned a legal right to proceed.
Have the opponents of TMT been able to appear before similar forums at the other partners to make these arguments? And if so, how have those arguments been received?
Again, Dr. Wong Wilson, I'm going to come to you first. Have you had venues with the other partners where you've been allowed to present your case?
Yes, thank you. Not in this very similar, larger, more open forum, but in a small group. A few of us were able to speak directly with representatives from Japan and from Canada. Dr. Yang was there, and a representative from AURA, Dr. Mountain. So we did have this discussion, presented our concerns, but we were the only ones there. It was not a discussion with others who opposed. I assume they've had their own discussions with the same group of people. So yeah, very limited.
You don't have any feedback from the other partners on how they're leaning?
Oh, I hesitate to speak on their behalf. I think Dr. Yang would probably be more able to represent them there.
Thank you. Chancellor Yang, do you have anything to add to that?
May I refer this to Michael?
Of course.
I think I answered this. Some of the partners still hold out hope that they prefer Mauna Kea, and they hold out hope that somehow something can be worked out, particularly with the engagement of the NSF in the Section 106.
And Michael, let me just tag on with Regent Stigura's indulgence. We are one of the elements we are a constituent group from which consensus needs to be derived, correct?
Correct.
So we get to express ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Regent Stigura.
If I may ask Ms. Neal, she mentioned how having the telescopes in her backyard awakened her a love of science and math. Does she feel that her support of the project versus the elders' opposition to it, is this a generational thing? Does she feel that younger generations of scientists and scholars in Hawaii will be harmed if we remove our support from this?
Yes, I do believe that the failure to build the 30-meter telescope will most definitely cause harm, not only on a scientific level, but also a financial and economical level. I am aware that Hawaii's main industry is tourism. Most of my friends work in tourism, and they've all been laid off in the midst of this pandemic. Whereas I've been very fortunate enough to find a source of income by working at a telescope, because I've been fortunate enough to have the education and skill set in order to do so. And so for those of us who support the telescope, that's what this represents. TMT represents a future for us here on the islands that won't be reliant on tourism, and that is much more respectable, honestly.
Thank you.
And then lastly,
go ahead.
If I may, if UC leaves the project, will we continue to fund the educational programs that we have promised to Hawaiians and other monies that were agreed to be provided for various programs?
Chancellor Yang, were you trying to answer that? If not, I was going to go to Paul Jenny. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Regent Zettel. If we were to pull out of the project, we would have no influence or no ability to support or continue that education. That education, those grants are funded by the TMT board, and if we're no longer part of it, we would not participate. We would not have the ability to participate in those decisions.
But Paul, if we were to pull out and the rest of the partners were still there, doesn't the TMT board still have the obligations they've committed to?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you.
So commitments go one way. We can pull our commitment and we expect others to honor theirs.
I was just trying to get a clear answer to your question in the distinction between the university and the partnership. Okay. But I think your follow-up is on point. This was only a discussion item. It was scheduled to be 1 hour. We started at 10:37. It is now 12:33. So we've essentially taken 2 hours to have this discussion. I want to thank everybody who presented. I want to thank the board for their questions. And this will likely not be the last time we consider this. And perhaps the next time it would be scheduled as an action item as opposed to a just discussion item.